300,000 German soldiers were surrounded at Stalingrad in November 1942. Hitler told them to hold. He told them relief was coming. The relief column stopped 48 kilometers away and turned back. Of the 300,000 men who entered the pocket, fewer than 6,000 ever saw Germany again. You are 24 years old and you are from Freiburg in Baden, where your father teaches mathematics at a gymnasium on Bertholdstrasse. The thing you know best before all of this is the smell of that classroom in winter. Chalk, dust and cold radiator iron, and the particular stillness of a room full of students working through a problem that has a correct answer somewhere at the end of it. You have been in the Soviet Union for 14 months. You are a Gefreiter in Infantry Regiment 578, 305th Infantry Division, fighting through a city that no longer functions as a city. Through rooms and corridors and stairwells of buildings that are not buildings anymore but positions, each floor a problem with a Soviet solution somewhere inside it. On November 19th, the Soviet counteroffensive begins to the north and south of the city. What you know on November 19th is that the artillery to the north is heavier than it has been and that it continues through the night and into the 20th. On the 21st, the word comes that the Soviet armies have linked up near a town called Kalach, 80 kilometers to the west. You understand what this means, the way your father's students understood when they reached the end of a proof and the numbers came out wrong. Not an explosion of understanding, just a settling, a quiet reorganization of everything you knew into a shape you had not seen coming. The ring is closed. 300,000 men, them, are now on the inside of it. Your section commander, Oberfeldwebel Krebs, told the platoon that morning that the Soviets had overextended themselves and the flanks would be restored within the week. He said this with the particular certainty of a man repeating something he has been told to believe. You write a letter to your father that evening. The letter says the situation is difficult but manageable, and that you expect it to be resolved before Christmas. You write this because you have been writing letters that say manageable for 14 months and the habit is stronger than the truth. The truth is that the numbers have come out wrong and you can feel exactly how wrong they are. You give it to the courier. You do not know if there will be more couriers after this one. The Kessel, the cauldron, is approximately 40 kilometers east to west and 20 kilometers north to south at its widest points. Inside it are 22 German divisions and roughly 300,000 men. The Luftwaffe promised 500 tons of supplies per day. They deliver an average of 94 tons. This is enough to sustain a garrison. It is not enough to sustain an army fighting a defensive battle in temperatures that drop to -40°C in January. The cold begins killing men at a rate that the Soviet infantry has not managed. You are in the factory district on the eastern edge of the Kessel, in a section of destroyed building that your platoon has been defending since October. The building has changed hands 3 times by floors, each floor a negotiation in grenades and entrenching tools, currently German on the bottom 2 floors and Soviet on the 3rd. You have not been outside this building in 11 days. Your ration is 200 grams of bread per day and a small quantity of horse meat when horses are available, which requires the horses to still be alive. 94 tons per day distributed among 300,000 men works out to approximately 313 grams per man per day of everything, food and ammunition and medicine and fuel. 313 grams of everything you need to live and fight, which is not enough of anything. You are cold in a way that has stopped being a sensation and become a condition, the way silence is not a sound but the absence of sound. The cold no longer arriving from outside but simply present in everything. In the wall you lean against, in your own hands when you look at them, in the bread when you eat it. You have a letter from your father in your breast pocket, received 3 weeks before the ring closed. The last letter you will receive for as long as this lasts or until it stops lasting. In it your father mentions that he has been working through a proof with his advanced students, a problem in combinatorics, and that the students are struggling with the enumeration of possibilities. You think about enumeration of possibilities. You have enumerated yours and the number isn't $. On December 12th, Army Group Dawn launches Operation Winter Storm, a relief column under General Hoth driving northeast from Kotelnikovo toward the Kessel, 230 kilometers away. The column covers 48 kilometers in 7 days, fighting through Soviet positions, and stops on December 19th at the Myshkova River. Paulus asks permission to break out southwest to meet the relief column. The breakout would require abandoning the eastern positions, which would require disobeying Hitler's order to hold Stalingrad. Hitler does not give permission. The relief column waits at the Myshkova River for 4 days while the decision that cannot be made is not made. Then the Soviet counteroffensive pushes Army Group Don back, and the relief column withdraws, and the 48 kilometers becomes first 80 and then 120 and then a distance that no longer has a number attached to it. You do not know any of this. You know that on December 19th the sound of artillery to the southwest, which has been growing for a week, stops growing. You have been listening to it grow for 7 days the way you listened to your father's clock in the hallway at home, a sound you heard without hearing, a sound that organized the silence around it. When it stops growing, you know what that means before you understand what that means. You sit in the ruins of the factory building and you hold the knowledge the way you hold the cold, which is not by resisting it but by allowing it to be present, because resistance costs more than you have. The letter from your father is in your breast pocket. You do not take it out. January is the arithmetic. The daily ration drops to 100 grams of bread, then to 75. The Luftwaffe delivers less as the weather worsens and the airfields inside the pocket are taken one by one, the perimeter shrinking, the Kessel contracting around its center. By mid-January, the Kessel is half the size it was in November and still contracting. You have stopped thinking about relief. You have stopped thinking about most things that require a future tense. The mind is efficient in the way cold is efficient. It abandons what it cannot sustain, and futures are expensive to maintain when the present is this present. What you think about instead is small and specific. You think about the classroom on Bertelstrasse in winter, the smell of chalk and cold radiator iron, the sound of students working. You think about a particular Sunday in 1938, when your father took you to a concert at the Freiburg Stadttheater and afterward you walked home, along the Dreisam River in the dark. Your father explained the structure of the piece you had heard, the way the themes returned, the way a composer could make an ending feel inevitable even though it was chosen. You think about inevitability. A man from your section, a schoolteacher from Cologne named Berger who has been in your platoon since training, develops frostbite in both feet in the second week of January. Berger plays chess against himself in the evenings using improvised pieces made from spent cartridge casings. His feet are wrapped in strips of tent canvas. He continues to hold his section of the position because there is nowhere else for him to go. He stops playing chess in the third week. You do not ask him why. You know why. On January 22nd, the last airfield inside the Kessel falls to the Soviet advance. There are no more supply flights. There are no more evacuation flights for the wounded. There is nothing coming in and nothing going out. The perimeter is now approximately 20 kilometers across at its widest. The ration is 50 grams of bread. 50 grams is not a ration, it is the form of a ration, the shape of an action that no longer has the substance to be the action. You hold it in your hand and your hand has been this cold for so long that you cannot feel the bread's weight, only its temperature, which is the same as everything else. On January 31st, Field Marshal Paulus surrenders the southern pocket. On February 2nd, the northern pocket surrenders. You are in a building on the western edge of the city when the order comes. You walk out into the street. The temperature is -22°C and the city is a surface of snow and rubble, and the shapes of things that were walls and vehicles and positions and are now covered in the same white that covers everything. The snow making the city uniform, making everything the same depth below the surface. The Soviet soldiers who receive your surrender are wearing sheepskin coats and felt boots. You look at their boots and you understand, with the particular clarity of a man who has been thinking about arithmetic for 3 months, that this outcome was always in the numbers. That someone somewhere did this enumeration and arrived at this answer before the ring closed, and that the question you have been living inside for 73 days was already answered before you knew it was being asked. You are 24 years old. You have your father's letter in your breast pocket. The column of German prisoners begins to walk west, into captivity, into a Soviet winter that has no interest in the distinction between soldiers and prisoners when it comes to the application of cold. Of the 300,000 men who entered this pocket, fewer than 6,000 will see Germany again. You do not know yet which side of that number you are on. You walk. The mathematics of it will take years to finish. And somewhere in Freiburg, in a classroom on Bertoldstrasse, the radiator is either warm or it is not, and your father's students are either working through a proof or they are not. And the answer at the end of it is either what they expected or it is not. You have learned that the answer is not always what you expected. You walk west into the white.